Tonight we are going to be looking at the idea of temptation and how it is that through the Word of God we're able to prevail. One disclaimer from the beginning, I'm not saying that the fruit of the tree was an apple. However, that was the best slide I could find, and so I chose to use it. It shows up really good. However, it is very interesting that for whatever that fruit was, that was something that was tempting enough to cause all of mankind to go for the rest of their existence in a state of sin because of the temptation that was yielded to, and that from generation to generation, people are going to be faced with temptations and give in to them. We know, though, that it's not because of the fruit itself, but because of the perception that Satan gave to Eve, that by partaking of that fruit, you are going to be wise just like God. And God, after all, is only withholding something from your hand. There's something that He knows that you would like, that you would enjoy, that you would want, that would make you better, that would actually make you like Him. And He doesn't want that. And with that first bit of suspicion and doubt, she took of the tree and gave to her husband with her, and they ate of that tree. And so tonight, I want us to really look at who Satan is. And it's nothing that I think is going to be new for us, but I think it's something that we need to, from time to time, go through. The reason being is because if you've ever been involved in any kind of sports, especially in some really competitive sports against some other teams where there's something on the line, not the casual type, but like high school or college level, and on the professional level, that when you are going into a game, what you'll usually do is you'll study film. And you'll study film about that opponent to learn some of their tales, to learn some of the ways in which they go about the tactics of executing their game plan. And if it's a one-on-one competition like boxing or some type of mixed martial arts or something, many times they'll study one another to see when it is and what's going to happen. If this person drops their left arm, what does that usually mean? Does that mean there's an overhead right coming, or what does that mean? There's some tale that's attached to that, because they want to understand the tactics of their opponent. When we go through a study of Satan and how it is that he operates and how he works, we need to understand what his tactics are and how those things really do prey upon our vulnerabilities, where it is that we are the weakest. Before we even get into the lesson tonight, do you know what your weaknesses are? Do you know those areas where it is very easy for Satan to attack you? Very easy for Satan to not just tempt you, but actually cause you to give in to it. And at the end of the day, is it really any better than fruit? What he's causing you to sin over, is it really any better than just some fruit? Is it really worth what it's going to cost your soul at the end? That's why it's important to study things like this. So that's where we're going to start. So if you're ready for your 3 words tonight, let's see the notebooks held up real high. Very cool. All right, here's your 3 words: eyes, flesh, and pride. As you probably know, when you go through a study in the book of Genesis about the sin and how it is that Satan operates, we're always going to use these 3 words. The reason being is because it's the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. This is the way in which all mankind has always been tempted to sin. Even when you see with Eve, she saw that the tree was good for food. It was something that was able to make one wise. And it was something that when she saw that tree, it was something that she wanted because of what it promised to her. And because of that, she took of it and she ate. So the eyes, the flesh, and the pride. I'm going to ask you a question again. Do you know where you are the weakest? What are the lusts of the eyes that's involved in that? What are the lusts of the flesh that are involved in that? What is the pride of life that's involved in that? Because it may be one of the 3, it could be 2 of the 3, it could be all 3 of the 3. Most likely it is. And so again, identifying where we're the weakest, knowing that that's where Satan's going to attack you, and it's going to involve this. That is part of his tactics and what he does. From the beginning of time, Satan has been nothing more than a liar. And if we're trying to understand his tactics, that's where we have to begin. That Satan's goal from the very beginning is to cause a separation between us and God. Satan's number 1 goal is to cause you to lose your soul and be eternally separated from God. The way in which he does that most often is through a lie. We know that Jesus had even said about Satan, he was talking about people at the time, but he says, you're of your father. Notice how Satan is described in these verses. That you're of your father, the devil. The desires of your father you want to do. They desired to kill Jesus. He was a murderer from the beginning, not justly take a life, but a murderer. He's a murderer from the beginning, and he does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. We know how harsh that term would be if we called someone else a liar. It's one thing to say to a person that you have lied. It's another thing when you call a person to their face a liar. And when Jesus is talking about Satan, he did not mince words about it. He is a liar. And he's been that way from the very beginning, and he is a murderer. And whenever you're doing the things that Satan wants to do, you're doing the desires of the one that begot you, the one that you came from, your father, the devil. We're claiming not just allegiance for a time, but we're causing ourselves to be family members when we follow after the desires that Satan puts before us. And as I said a moment ago, Satan is very good about knowing what lies will most often carry us away. That when we think about him being a liar, we know that he lies about God and about God's motives. That in the beginning with Eve, we know that he lied about God. Did God say this to you? Surely he didn't mean that. The only reason that God told you that is because God does not want you to be like him. He knows that when you eat of it, you're going to be like him. He always causes us to doubt what God's motives are behind anything. Most often when we get that age where we want to be a lot more independent and don't really want to submit ourselves to God's will, it's because we think that God is withholding something from us. Why should I wait until marriage before I engage in the physical activities that are only permitted within marriage? Why is it that I should have to deny myself the pleasures of what other people are doing in their own personal lives? Why is it that at my workplace, when everybody else goes out drinking, that somehow I'm not supposed to do that? Those are the kinds of things that Satan causes us to doubt who God is and what God's motives actually are all about. That Satan lies about other things. He lies about God's word itself. There are so many people who have questions, and from time to time we have legitimate questions about, is God's word really without error? Well, Satan lies to us and tells us it's full of error, it's full of contradictions. Satan lies to us about whether or not the word of God is actually effectual in my life. Yes, it was good in the first century when they were living through those simple times, but they didn't have all the busyness and turmoil and all the things that I have to go through in my own life. And so Satan lies to us and says, yes, it's very meaningful for them, but it really doesn't have any meaning for me. For some reason, we always think that I am the exception. Yes, God's word is very powerful. It is very effective, except for me, except for my situation, except for what I'm going through. And I make my exception of God's rules and his commandments that he gives to us. That God, when he said these things about things like marriage and divorce and remarriage, yes, that applies to everyone else, but see, this is my family that's going through it. This is me that's going through it. This is about my happiness. That yes, God's rules are right when it comes to the way in which we worship, but we really need to change things because we're just losing too many young people. And he tells us lies about those kinds of things. God's word is without error and it's without fault altogether. He lies about the church, and he tells us that the church is an outdated institution. It is one meant to tear you down and to keep you pigeonholed. It is one that, when we think about the church, is to blame for all of the problems that we have. All of a sudden, it's not because I didn't try to raise my kids correctly or I made mistakes raising my children. It was because of that Bible class teacher that was boring. It's because of that preacher that was boring or long-winded. It's because of that eldership that didn't rule the way that they should. It's about those members who didn't take part and didn't participate. It's always about something else. It's about the church. And just as it is, it seems our society, at least for a time, believed that you could drop a kid off in kindergarten, come back 13 years later, and he'd be a productive member of society. That doesn't work. And it doesn't work that way when it comes to the church either. That we have responsibilities on our own, but he lies to us about the church. He lies about the need to be here. He lies about the need to take part. He lies about all the works that we do. He lies about, really, is it that important how the money is used? Does God really care about that? He lies about all of those things because, as it was in the beginning, he wants us to have suspicion and doubt. He lies about salvation, not just about what it takes to be saved. And we know there's lots of lies about that, but he lies about sin itself. That there are certain sins that, yes, we would all agree would cost us our soul if we participated in those things regularly. But there's other sins that Satan's like, surely you won't die for that one. I mean, really, it's just like eating fruit. Really, is God going to kill you because you ate some fruit? And he lies about it. He lies about not just salvation and these other things, but every single lie that has ever been told, Satan is at the heart of it. There's not a lie that I've ever told or a lie that you've ever told. There's not a lie that I've believed or a lie that you've believed that Satan wasn't at the very heart of it. Because he is a liar from the beginning. It is his native language, and his purpose is to be a murderer and to destroy us. That's why Satan is not just described in the scriptures as being a liar, but he's also called an accuser. Revelation 12 and verse 10, we're actually going to be looking at this next week in our Bible class, where it says, "Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation, strength, and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down." How does it make you feel to think about this imagery of Satan standing before God and every day, day and night, telling God why you are not deserving to go to heaven? Someone every day, every night, forever, campaigning against your soul being saved. The accuser of our brethren. He's been doing it from the beginning, and he does it now. When we think about Satan and the way in which he tries to affront us and tries to accuse us and bring charges, the thing that Satan wants us to believe is that we are not worthy and we are not deserving of the sacrifice that Christ made for us. And yet in Romans 8, this chapter that we know so very well, if I were to ask for a show of hands, probably 99% of the audience is already familiar with what Romans 8 talks about. And the way in which victory is talked of as being a secured inheritance of the saints. That it begins with this wonderful passage that there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. It talks about the way in which we're supposed to walk according to the Spirit and not according to the flesh. But it puts it in the tense of we are not doing those things, therefore there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ. That when God looks at you, he doesn't look at you as some slave in his household. He looks at you as being an adopted child. That his Spirit bears witness with your spirit that you are a child of God. It ends with this great crescendo of victory, starting in verse 31 through the end of the chapter. And it talks about us being more than conquerors. And in the midst of it, verse 33 says, "Who shall bring a charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies." And in spite of all that, how many of us feel exactly the way the accuser has tried to make us feel? That God has went out of his way in the sacrificing of his Son, went out of the way in the giving of his word, went out of his way with telling us all these wonderful things just in one chapter of the Scriptures. And yet we still believe the liar who accuses us of not being worthy or deserving of what Christ gave us, therefore we did not receive it. And how many of us fall victim to it? And what is it more than just basically a piece of fruit that he offered out there? Satan is good at what he does, and he knows how to cause us to feel undeserving of things. He is a strong tempter. Even Jesus himself in Matthew 4 and verse 3 was tempted by Satan, and it even says that when the tempter came to him, he said, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread." That there is no one who is off limits to this great accuser and this great liar. That even the Son of God himself, he is arrogant and proud enough to go to him and to his own face challenge him that if you are indeed the Son of God, change these stones to become bread. So much so that you would think that what Satan was offering him would not be a huge deal. He'd been out there for 40 days and 40 nights, and in the course of that, he was hungry, as it says. And Satan says, well, if you're the Son of God, then cause these stones to become bread and get something to eat. What sense does it make to be this hungry? And yet Jesus' purpose in going out there was to fast. Jesus' purpose in going out there was to deny the flesh. Jesus' purpose in going out there was to control the passions even of his fleshly tent that he was dwelling in. And he tells Satan, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And with that, the battle began. You think about what Satan is trying to tempt us to do. And as I said at the beginning, he knows where we are vulnerable, and he knows the ways in which we can be approached. Let no one say when he is tempted, I'm tempted by God. God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. What Satan does is he goes to you with the thing that causes you to sin. And it may not be the same thing that causes me to sin. It may not be something that's a temptation to me, but it is a temptation to you. And that's why Satan offers it to you. Offering it to me would have no bearing. Satan knows what those things are. He knows what those things are because he is in a higher plane than what we are in his understanding of things. And another thing is this, and this is the part that's really scary to me. All you really have to do is watch for a little while. All you got to do is sit back and just pay attention for a little while. And for most of us, it's pretty obvious what causes us to sin, what causes us to doubt, what causes us to stumble, what causes us to fall. If nothing else, sit on 75 for a little while. You'll see it. It doesn't take much. Go to Walmart, and when you go to the front of the line, that's when they have to change the paper and the receipt thing all over again. You go to your restaurant, they don't have your favorite food. You go into your house and see the way that we talk to one another in our own home. Or sit down with us and see what we watch on television, or what we're listening to on our earbuds, or the conversations we're having with one another that we think are in private, that we think no one else knows. Each one is tempted when he's drawn away by his own desires and enticed. It doesn't take someone on a higher plane of spiritual understanding, really. All you really got to do is watch this for a while, and you can see it. That's the part that's really scary. That's how obvious it is. That's why it was pretty easy for Satan to go to Eve and say, did God say that if you ate of this, you would die? I mean, look at it. Does it look like something that would kill you? It's pleasing to the eye. It's good for food. It'll make you wise. And she took of it and she ate. Every sin that we commit is done the same way. Is this really going to cost me my life? We don't believe it will because we believe Satan's lies. Satan now has a reason to accuse us, and he is a great tempter. So how is it that we can actually overcome and escape Satan's snares? This is not an exhaustive list, but I think one of the places where we need to start is by deeply immersing ourselves. It's not about reading, and it's not just about studying. It's about deeply immersing ourselves. It is about the Word of God being something that we love and that we meditate all the day upon it. Oh, how I love your law, the psalmist says. It is my meditation all the day. We did a study of that word meditation several months ago. And as we were talking about that word, it has so many different meanings when you go through the Scripture. It is literally the idea of talking to yourself. We talk to ourselves about a lot of things. But how many times do we actually talk to ourselves throughout the day about the Word of God? Some of the ways in which it was used was talking about actually in the form of singing or expressed through song. How many times are we singing and meditating on the Word of God and the songs that are going through our heads? One of the words, and the one that I loved best, was one of the words that was Haggah, which means it's like a lion that has killed its prey and it's purring as it's eating that meal. And how often do we look at the Word of God as being like that? Something that I love so much that I have captured this meal and it is mine and I'm going to enjoy every bit of it. That is what the psalmist is talking about. That is the love that we're supposed to have. That is what being immersed in the Word is. Because then when Satan comes to us, it's a lot easier to recognize his lies and not to believe his accusations or be tempted by what he offers. Because we're going to refuse to compromise what is the truth. I know it's not true what Satan says about me. I know it's not true what Satan tries to get me to believe. I know that's not true. So why do I give in to it? That is compromising truth. Then we look at Ephesians 4 and verse 14, it says to not be like children who are tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine. Here it talks about the trickery of men and its cunning craftiness and deceitful plotting. But as we already noticed, where do these things come from? They come from Satan himself. It's real easy to deceive a child into doing certain things. That when my kids were little, one of the things I did with them is I told them to stand in front of the television set. And I had a stopper gun. And I said, I want you to stand still because I'm going to try to shoot as close to you as I can without hitting you. That's not my intention. And so I kept shooting Orton in the head over and over again. He's like, try again, Daddy. Okay. Well. Because kids are easily fooled. How many of us are just that same way? We fall for the same thing over and over and over again. We're not supposed to be like children. That the next shiny thing that comes along shouldn't be something that I'm chasing after. You've heard the illustration about the fishing lure. That is made in such a way that it would be attractive to the fish. It's got to move the right way or the fish can know that it's not actually another fish. That even the fishing line itself has to be of a certain width. It has to be of a certain translucence so that the fish does not see it because it knows something's not right about that. And if something's not right about it, he's not going to strike it. And so we need to not be compromising with the truth. We have to first know what it is, then refuse to turn from it. We put on the whole armor of God as well. Ephesians chapter 6, 10 through 18. Any soldier that goes into battle without the proper armor is defenseless, and there's a guaranteed defeat that's going to be coming. In Ephesians 6, starting at verse 10, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. We don't wrestle, he says in verse 12, against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand, and in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Verse 14, stand therefore. If you just go back through there in 11, 13, 14, and notice the word stand that is used over and over and over again. What do you think Paul's point is about taking up the whole armor of God? Stand. Don't give in to it. Don't fall prey to it. You can stand. Jesus shows us, and the difference between what happened with Jesus and Eve in the garden, because it was still lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life that was offered to Jesus as well. The difference is this: Eve was thinking about self. Jesus was thinking about obedience to God. He was thinking about his true purpose in life and not himself. Jesus knew how to stand. That there was nothing that Satan was going to be able to offer Jesus. That even at the end of Jesus, right there at the very end of his life, when he's in the garden praying to God, that if there's some other method of my offering myself for the sins of mankind than this cross, this crucifixion, let it be, nevertheless, not what I want, but what you want. Jesus knew how to stand even when he felt his weakest. That's what the armor of God is about. When you go through that armor that is listed, starting at verse 14, the waist girded with truth, the breastplate of righteousness. Verse 15, our feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Verse 16, the shield of faith to quench the fiery darts of the wicked one. Verse 17, the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit. Each and every one of those is gained through an understanding and application of God's Word. Every one of them. There's not one that's removed from it, because that is the secret to standing, is that we have to believe that God means what he says what he means, we can understand it, we can apply it, and we can do it. That Satan will flee if we resist him. But we have to know how to stand with God's armor and not our own. We have to develop a consistent prayer life, not one that's haphazard, not one that's only there whenever we're in moments of trouble. But as it says here, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, because God gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. How often do we need to be going to God prior to the temptations and not just after the temptation? Praying for wisdom. Not just wisdom to know how to get out of the temptation, but wisdom to recognize it before it becomes a temptation to us. These would be good prayers for us to be praying. We need to have our eyes fixed on something that's higher. Hebrews 11, 24 through 26 gives us the example of Moses and how it was that even while he was the son of Pharaoh's daughter, he refused to be called such. He refused to be called such because he chose to suffer affliction with the people of God. because the pleasures that he would have been able to enjoy, they were passing pleasures. And he chose rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. All the treasures of Egypt he considered of less value because he was looking forward to the reward. That's what we're supposed to do. That satisfaction that you get from the sin. Satan's tempting you with something that you desire, that's going to prey upon your lust, that's going to cause you to hopefully yield to that for him. What reward do you have from it that's lasting? Can you stop for a moment? Whatever that sin was, whatever that temptation was where Satan gets you so much that you maybe even wrote it down, if you dared speak it through writing. What does it give you that's of any lasting value? And can you put them both side by side? Is giving up heaven really worth this? Keep your eyes fixed on heaven so that you don't listen to what it is that Satan's telling you about that sin. One thing I know that we all are concerned with, and something that we need to try to do and keep in front of our minds, is making sure that our children are ready for that road ahead. As they get older and they want to obey the gospel and they want to become Christians and to follow the right path, we need to make sure that they're aware of exactly how Satan's going to tempt them. There's so many passages, especially when you go through the book of Proverbs, that's advice that sounds like it's from a father to his child. And in that advice, it talks about a lot of things that pertain to just wisdom. For example, it talks about there's this road where this adulterous woman lives. Don't go down that road. He doesn't tell him don't commit adultery. That's a given. Don't go into her. That's a given. Well, what he even says is don't go down that road. You know where she lives. Don't go near that house. If you don't go near that house, you don't go down that road, you're not going to be involved with her. We know that, and yet we still argue, but there's nothing sinful about going down that road. There's nothing sinful about going near that house. And people try to get as close to it as they possibly can without engaging in it. That's where a childish mindset begins. What we're supposed to be teaching them is not just that a young man can cleanse his way by taking heed to your word, but it's also that with my whole heart I have sought you. That when we're talking about seeking God and seeking his counsel, seeking his word, it's not by just absorbing the do's and the don'ts, but it's also by trusting in his wisdom when he tells you don't get near it, because if you get near it, you're going to get burned. And how often do we tell our own children that and try to get them to listen to us? God does the same thing with his own creation. He says, "Oh, let me not wander from your commandments. Your word I have hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you." And again, God's wisdom is given in these verses as well. And so stop trying to look for excuses to get close to it. And teach your children to understand that there is a road that you can take that could possibly lead to this. Don't go near that road. That's why the Bible tells us that there are many works of the flesh. And after it gives a list of those things, it says, and the like. And something that are like these things as well. Because we're supposed to exercise some wisdom in those things. At the end of the day, what's most likely going to happen to a lot of us is that we're probably still going to fall short. And we're going to give in to some of the temptations and the struggles that Satan puts before us. We're going to take of the fruit. We're going to eat of it. We might even share it with others. And when that happens, what we need to be doing is about seeking forgiveness. And one thing along this line that really ties into what we were talking about this morning with the resurrection, that the resurrection of Jesus is so powerful because it's one of the things that God promised. And we know that we can have confidence in our own resurrection because that is something that God has promised. And because we have seen that promise in action because of the risen Savior that we serve, we can trust with all confidence that God is not lying to me. That no matter what it is that God has promised, he will give. And here we're told that if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. We can trust that God's promises are true. When we're seeking forgiveness, it is about seeking to be closer to God. These verses are in the context of walking in the light. And when we transgress and we're not walking in the light and we fall short of walking in the light, we have a way back that God has given to us. It's not an excuse to sin. It's not a license to do that which is evil. But what it is letting us know that God is trying to save us. He is not trying to condemn us. God wants to forgive us. He wants to bring us to heaven. He wants us to be with Him throughout all eternity. If you sin, come back to God. Ask for forgiveness. God is willing to forgive. All you have to do is ask, and it's not that hard. God, forgive me. That's not hard. What is hard is to truly mean it. What is hard is to truly seek God to where, God, don't just forgive me, but help me to never repeat that. Help me to recognize that road that I started down. Help me to recognize that desire that's in me that should not be there. Help me to address this lust that I have that I'm having a hard time conquering. Lord, be with me that way. Forgive me of my sins, but cleanse me from all unrighteousness as well. Help me, dear God. That's where God is found. Satan is a liar. God has never lied to you. Satan has lied about everything he's promised you. God has never done that. Who should we trust? So the question I'm going to leave with you tonight is this, and as I said at the very beginning, where are your vulnerabilities to how Satan works? If tonight you're subject to the invitation, if tonight there's something that you need to address, that you want some help with, that's what we're here to do. If you're not a Christian and you want to obey the gospel, the waters of baptism are ready. God said if you believe and are baptized, you will be saved. Simple as that. Satan would have you think a lot of different things about that passage. But God's the one who said, if you believe and are baptized, you'll be saved. It's just that simple. If there's something that we can help you with, please let us know. As together we stand and sing.